Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the National Museum of the American Indian. My name is Hayes Lavis, and I work here at the museum in the Museum Programs Department. Normally, for Dia de los Muertos, you'll be joining us either in New York City in the beautiful Geiger Pavilion, or in Washington, D.C. on the Mall in our Potomac Atrium. The word Potomac is from the Algonquian language and roughly translates to where the goods are brought in. While the museum in DC is currently open, we are continuing to do our programs virtually for the foreseeable future. We'd also like to start by thanking our friends at the Latino Center for their generosity. Federal support for this program is generously provided by the Latino Initiatives Pool administered by the Smithsonian Latino Center. We are going to be sharing 3 different areas of Dia de los Muertos for this program today. The first area will be from Cynthia Vidari in our research department. We'll be taking on the most frequently asked questions about Dia de los Muertos. Second part, we will join Chef Natali Duran on his culinary journey through the foods and feasting associated with Dia de los Muertos. Chef Duran is from Oaxaca in Mexico. And finally, we will be joined with Evelyn Arantes, who is Maya, and Joaquin Newman, as we learn more about the marigold traditions associated with Dia de los Muertos. You can also join us on Facebook in Remembering Your Loved Ones. You go to our Facebook page, and there'll be a new file there which has images of ofrendas from past Day of the Dead programs. You can pick your favorite image and post your memories of your loved ones to that ofrenda image. And now it is with great pleasure that we introduce Cynthia Vidari. Cynthia, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, thank you, Hayes. My name is Cynthia Vidari, and I'm a researcher here in the National Museum of American Indian, and my specialty is in folklore or traditional culture.
Cynthia, thank you. So why don't you tell us what exactly is Day of the Dead?
So in its most basic sense, Day of the Dead is an act of remembrance. It serves a human need to be connected with departed loved ones. During this time, the departed spirits return to the earthly plane and coexist with loved ones. Various forms of remembering days continue to be practiced by indigenous peoples of the Americas. In Mexico, these days are widely known as Dias de los Muertos, where November 1st is set aside for children who have passed on, and November 2nd is for adults. But the precise celebration dates vary according to the customs of individual families and communities. The contemporary interpretation of the Day of the Dead can include a wide range of activities, but the ofrenda is a cornerstone of the event.
So, what exactly are the origins of Day of the Dead in Mexico?
Well, before the Spanish arrived in Mexico, the many indigenous communities had elaborate philosophies and rituals that were associated with death. Perhaps the most noted events were the Micahuitl, which is the little feast of the dead, and the Micahuitl, which is the great feast of the dead. The arrival of Spanish and Roman Catholicism brought other ways of commemorating the deceased. In Mexico, like in other places in the Americas, indigenous and Catholic practices came together throughout hundreds of years, and the resulting Day of the Dead tradition reflects both of these influences. Perhaps the most noted of events were the Micahuitl, which is the little feast of the dead, and the Micahuitl, which means the great feast of the dead in the Nahuatl language. The arrival of the Spanish and Roman Catholicism brought other ways of commemorating the deceased. In Mexico, like in other places in the Americas, indigenous and Catholic practices came together throughout many hundreds of years, and the resulting tradition of Day of the Dead reflects both of these influences.
So, Cynthia, could you tell us what is an ofrenda and what is the difference between the term ofrenda and the term altar?
Well, an ofrenda, which literally means offering, is a temporary construction where the deceased loved one is received during Days of the Dead. The objective is to create a space where you engage with your departed ones and enjoy time with them and offer the things they enjoyed in life. Think of it like you were sitting at a dinner table and you had special guests that had been invited over. These places are sometimes called altars, but the term ofrenda more deeply conveys the idea that it is a gift that is offered to a loved one rather than a sacrifice.
And where would you find these ofrendas?
Ofrendas are primarily constructed in homes, but the tradition has expanded way into public spaces. So you can now find ofrendas in office buildings and hotel lobbies, museums, university buildings, and in town squares. These public ofrendas can be large art installations or exhibitions, like those you see in Zocalo, which is Mexico City's largest plaza.
And what exactly does an ofrenda look like?
Ofrenda designs are really quite varied. Some families build specially constructed platforms, and others just use the things you would find at home, like a tabletop or a dresser surface. Sometimes colors and directional positioning can be significant on ofrendas and can be associated with the four cardinal directions. Ofrendas can be of different sizes and different shapes. They can sometimes have decorative backdrops, or they can have things like arches which are covered with flowers and fruit. The ofrenda surface can be covered with a variety of materials, such as handcrafted tablecloths or ready-made textiles, or sometimes petates, which are hand-woven formats, can be used as well.
Well, that's very fascinating. Could you tell us what else would go on an ofrenda?
Sure. To the experienced eye, the ofrenda can sometimes seem to be a random assembly of items, but actually, in reality, people pay a lot of attention to what is selected and where it's placed. While each ofrenda is unique, we can describe some of the well-known elements. And it's easiest to understand these objects by their purpose and function on the ofrenda. You have things like visual and aromatic elements, which are necessary to help the soul navigate from the land of the dead to the land of the living. Candles will illuminate the way, and flowers provide a scent to follow. So, for example, the cempasúchil, which is a Mexican marigold, with its vivid orange color and its distinct fragrance, is an essential on the ofrendas. Also, the unique aroma of copal, which is a tree resin incense, is also an ofrenda standard. Other elements like salt and water protect the soul on their journey. Some families also place crucifixes or Catholic saints, and routinely, the Virgin of Guadalupe, which is the patron saint of Mexico, occupies a very prominent position. Even though she appears as a Catholic saint, for some she is Tonantzin, and this was an Aztec deity that was venerated at the place where the Virgin of Guadalupe appeared in 1531. Other items are particular to the recipient. So ofrendas can be personalized by placing photographs of the memorialized person. You can also set out favorite and new clothes for them. And for children, toys and candies are especially crucial on their ofrendas. And yet, some items are merely decorative, and this is an effort to beautify the ofrenda, but some of these decorative items can hold special meanings.
So what type of food exactly would be placed on an ofrenda?
Favorite meals are an essential way to indulge a loved one. Mainstay entrees can include mole and tamales, and both of these foods are extremely labor intensive. So it's an indication of how much you're wanting to do something special for your loved one. You can often also find seasonal fruits and traditional sweets, such as dulce de calabaza, which is a candied squash, and dulce de camote, which is a candied sweet potato. Also, you'll find chocolate or chocolate atole, which is a drink made of seasoned maize. Soft drinks and alcoholic beverages are also favorites. During this season, bakeries across the country will offer Day of the Dead bread. This bread is found in countless forms and is a fundamental component of any ofrenda.
Is there any specific imagery or artistic elements associated with Day of the Dead? Are there special arts that would go on the ofrenda?
Yes, there are. Mexico has got a very rich and elaborate art tradition, and some cities and regions are recognized for their particular Day of the Dead products. You'll find all sorts of skull and skeleton imagery in various craft forms and made from many various materials. You'll also see papel picado, which is a perforated tissue paper, and this is a Day of the Dead staple. Sugar skulls, which many of us are familiar with, and different varieties are found throughout the country. You also see miniature skeleton figures, which represent all sorts of occupations, such as doctors, athletes, students, musicians. And these miniatures would depict what these individuals might do in daily life. But perhaps the most widely recognized image of a skeleton is known as La Catrina, and she has become a central figure in Day of the Dead celebrations.
In contemporary history, has Day of the Dead always been popular in Mexico?
Actually, there have been moments in Mexican history when Day of the Dead was seen pejoratively as cosas de indios, or things that Indians did. During these periods, Day of the Dead survived mostly in regions with large indigenous populations. But you begin to see changes in this attitude during periods of nation building in the country. There were concerted efforts made to highlight indigenous cultures and incorporate them into a broader national identity. The muralist movement is an example of these nation building efforts. Lithographer Jose Guadalupe Posada popularized skeleton engravings, and much of his works were social critiques of a nation that was in transition in the early 20th century. His most well-known design is La Catrina, and she represents indigenous Mexicans who are aspiring to be more European in dress and demeanor. She's also referred to as La Catrina Garboncero, which is a term used to indicate indigenous people who are denying their heritage. Later, this image was made even more famous by artist Diego Rivera. He prominently placed his version of La Catrina in his mural entitled Dream of a Sunday Afternoon in Central Alameda. So over time, Day of the Dead transformed into a national expression. It's a source of pride. And regardless of ethnicity, social status, or religious preferences, it seems like the entire country now engages in remembering loved ones during Días de los Muertos.
So, what are some of the factors that may have caused changes in the Day of the Dead tradition?
Day of the Dead, like so many aspects of traditional culture, exist in a larger environment. And it's subject to change from within communities, but also from outside forces. Things like movies and internet have presented this tradition to the world. And it's often without any historical or cultural context. The deep meaning of the event often gets reduced to the simplest of ideas, and a lot of times misinformation can be miscommunicated. For example, the 2015 James Bond movie staged a Day of the Dead parade specifically for filming in Mexico City. And as a result of this, the following year, local organizers held the first ever parade. So now people can purchase Day of the Dead items throughout the world, and these items can range from decorative home items to wedding cakes. In the US, these items are easily available at major retail stores and on the internet.
And what has been the role of tourism in the spread of Dia de los Muertos through the United States and worldwide?
Day of the Dead tourism draws thousands of worldwide visitors to communities, mostly in central and southern Mexico. Perhaps some of the most well-known celebrations are Michoacan, Oaxaca, and around Mexico City. The introduction of large numbers of outsiders has led to changes in community cultural practices. Tours also drives the demand for Day of the Dead crafts. Today, in tourist markets, you can obtain these crafts year-round, where previously you could only get them during the fall. Tourism shapes the world's understanding of Day of the Dead and contributes to its expansion beyond Mexico.
And has Day of the Dead always been an American celebration?
Well, you would think so, but actually Day of the Dead is a relatively new expression in the United States. During the 1960s and 70s, we were in the middle of a civil rights movement. And at this moment, Mexican Americans organized to fight racism. This period of cultural and political advocacy is known as the Chicano movement. It also recognized the indigenous roots of Mexicans and Mexican Americans. During this time, Chicanos traveled to Mexico to learn about their indigenous traditions, and then they returned to the United States to share them in their communities. This identity recovery manifested itself through literature, through art, and cultural practices. Day of the Dead was a quintessential tradition by which Chicanos could demonstrate their indigenous identity. Many times artists organized Day of the Dead events and constructed ofrendas in local art centers. Chicanos built on the tradition they found in Mexico and later added components such as parades, plays, poetry readings, Azteca dancers, and mariachi music. And what you have is over the time, Day of the Dead activities spread to even larger audiences. Today, this event is observed in cities throughout the United States. Museums and universities erect ofrendas. City recreation departments produce elaborate events, and public schools often teach about it. And of course, bars will sponsor pub crawls during this event.
Why is Day of the Dead often called the Mexican Halloween?
Day of the Dead has incorrectly been called Mexican Halloween, and while the two have some commonalities, it's appropriate that each tradition is understood based on its own history and characteristics. Europeans brought Christian beliefs, including a tradition of remembering the dead. We know this as Halloween or Hallows Eve, All Saints Eve, and by many other names. In Mexico, this tradition and other Roman Catholic practices were combined with pre-Columbian traditions. However, for Mexicans, Day of the Dead remains a distinct commemoration with indigenous legacies firmly recognized. It is a time to be with departed loved ones and to celebrate their lives. In the United States, Halloween has all but lost its original purpose and has become a time for children to trick or treat or for adults to attend Halloween parties.
So why do you think it is important to study this tradition and for us to interpret it here at the National Museum of the American Indian?
I think it's important for us to continue our work on Day of the Dead because it continues to serve as a means by which many Native peoples deal with the loss of loved ones. Its importance as a significant human patrimony is recognized by its inscription in UNESCO's representative list of intangible cultural heritage of humanity. Day of the Dead has endured many changes and many influences, and not all of these have come from within the indigenous communities. Given the rapid changes in technology and globalism, this tradition is bound to continue evolving. And as of yet, the future impact to Day of the Dead in indigenous communities is unknown. So here at NMAI, we try to understand and honor this and other indigenous traditions through our public programs and scholarship.
So Cynthia, thank you very much. That was very interesting, and you've told us so much about Dia de los Muertos. And you've also made me hungry. Why don't we go next to Neftali Duran? He's Mixteco from Oaxaca, and he'll be telling us more about the foods associated with Dia de los Muertos. Welcome to Neftali, and thank you to Cynthia.
I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm from Oaxaca, Mexico. My peoples are the Mixtec people or the Mixteco people, or the Nusali, people from the rain, people from the clouds. And it's one of the largest and oldest groups of peoples in the Americas. And let's talk about a little bit about mole. Mole is a perfect example of cultures clashing and creating something beautiful. A lot of the spices in mole are not spices native to the Americas. Came from Europe, came from India. A lot of the spices in Oaxacan cooking usually come northern Africa through the Moors, and then the Spanish bring them to Mexico. When we get those ingredients, something throughout hundreds of years, you get to something that looks like this. That is really. We're talking a little bit about yesterday. A little bit about this yesterday. Chocolate is not a mole sauce. Chocolate is an ingredient. Should be an ingredient in the mole, but not a main. Not even a main component. The main components are gonna be chiles. So a lot of in this mole right here, there's probably about 28 ingredients. This is my family's mole that I got last week, and there's probably 28 ingredients. One of them being cacao or chocolate. This one, mole negro, it's a little bit more spicy, so it's not very sweet, but there is a hint of sweetness through the layers. A good way to understand Mexican food, or food from Oaxaca, is that there's got to be different layers. It's not supposed to just be spicy. It's got to build up in your mouth, and you're supposed to be able to taste different things. But we call it Mexican charring or Mexican toasting, which means that for European chefs, if you put tomatoes in the oven until they're like almost burned, they'll be like, what are you doing? You can't do that. But for us, if you think about how you make really good salsas, it was traditionally made in a comal over the fire, and you put the tomatoes direct on top of the comal, and that's how you develop the flavor, right? I see my sister here agreeing with me. That's how you develop the flavor. For a European chef, that would be unacceptable to like char a tomato. For us, that's the essence of our cooking. Same thing with chiles for mole. You're gonna harvest the chiles, you're gonna dry them in the sun, and then eventually you're gonna toast them on top of the comal, and then blend them into a paste like this with everything else. For a mole like this, it's gonna be same thing. There's always a purpose for everything in the kitchen. All tortillas that you don't eat, that are like left over, you're gonna toast them and grind them into this as a thickening agent. Either bread or tortilla, and then a lot of love. If you think about, and you know, and that's also true. You know, if you think about the amount of time that it takes to make a mole, it's not something that you're gonna do every day from scratch, but it's also not something that it's something that you're gonna do because you really love someone or you really want to celebrate something. It's not something that you just like, you know.
Special occasion food.
Special occasions, definitely. Since this is really concentrated, I'm just gonna add some water. Yes, I'm gonna get my onions ready and my parsley. You'll see what I'm gonna do with this, but I'm just gonna make some really thinly sliced, and I'm gonna put them on the side. And obviously, same thing, you know, you can use whatever you have available. I believe there's gonna be some recipe cards, and it probably calls for parsley, but if what you have is cilantro, you can always use cilantro. Except for that, you know, there's some people that they don't like cilantro. You guys know someone like that? Yeah? And so what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna start dropping the tortillas into the mole. And we're just gonna let him coat and get a little bit soft. And one thing that I'm missing here today is the queso fresco, but we do have some crema. So what I have here is my enmoladas. And obviously, you guys are familiar with enchiladas. You can also do the same thing. Like you can roll them, put them in a sheet tray, in a big plate, and then instead of put them in there, you can also just cut it. I like this version better because the whole tortilla gets soft, and you know. But it's up to you. Are we doing on time?
We're fine.
So the onion is gonna give it a really nice crunch, and it's also gonna balance the richness of the mole. Some cilantro. Actually, this is parsley. Some parsley in there. And then same thing as queso fresco. You can always buy a crema. This one is also from one of the local grocery stores here. But Mexican crema is pretty common too. Mm-hmm. As we said before, mole is one of those mother sauces that took a long time to develop, and there's a lot of history on that. If you think about moles, I usually refer to moles as the mother sauces of the Americas. Negro, you have rojo, you have coloradito, amarillo, green mole, and then there's a couple of white moles too. and there's a mole for every protein, for every dish. And it really depends on what you want to eat. For example, a white mole is gonna be white beans that are grounded and with spices, and it's a really delicious one that is not very common. There's another white mole, white mole that you can add almonds to it, and it's really creamy and really delicious. My favorite one is probably pipián, which is the tomatillos with pumpkin seeds. That's the basis of it, and then chilies and other spices. The mole negro is one of the most iconic ones with a lot of different ingredients, and probably this mole negro and mole rojo are the moles that mostly resemble also the Indian curries, because a lot of the same ingredients. There's a whole history of like trade around the world, and the spices are pretty similar. So those are the sister moles. Moles are a perfect example of the creativity and resiliency of indigenous people. Through the introduction of different ingredients, you get a lot of different ingredients from all over the world coming via Spain, and people created something beautiful and delicious, you know, and it's quite remarkable. But then after that, once you cook it, it should cook for a few hours, but not for a long time, or at some point it's gonna start burning. And one of the main reasons why Oaxaca is made only for some special occasions, because there is gonna be someone standing over a big pot, and their whole job is to stir it, right? However, there is a Mexican chef in Mexico City, this really fancy restaurant named Pujol, who is actually, what's the word that I'm fermenting? He's leaving his mole to ferment for over a year or up to a year, and then serving it. There may be another word that I'm looking for that is not fermenting. It's like when you have sourdough bread, and it can be spicy but not overwhelming. But you're supposed to be able to taste a lot of the spices, the almonds, the chocolate, not just sweetness. Think about this: tortilla a tortilla that we eat today. There's 10,000 years of history right here, and I'm gonna tell you why. It starts with agriculture in the Americas, in Mesoamerica, Oaxaca, Puebla. About 9,500 years ago, people started domesticating corn, which before corn, as we know it, it was a wild grass called teosintli. And people started domesticating teosintli into corn, which means that people started being able to stay in one place for a longer period of time as opposed to moving around. It took probably about 3,000 to 4,000 years for them to figure out how to nixtamalize. So corn itself is not we cannot process it as humans. There's not enough nutrition of it. So you need to nixtamalize corn so that you can have access to nutrition. In Mexico, in Oaxaca, probably about 5,000 years ago, that happened with nixtamalization. Originally with ash. Ash is an alkaline solution that when you put corn together, you boil it, it breaks down the enzymes, and then you can make a masa. We use ash first, and then eventually limestone. And limestone is what is used right now. Let's talk a little bit about pan de muerto. Pan de muerto is a sweet and rich dough bread that is very traditional during these celebrations. It's like a bun, and often decorated with bun-shaped skulls on top, and sometimes it also has a sugar skull at the end of it, especially during these times. It is always part of the ofrenda and it has a very distinct flavor because anise and even orange peels are added. Variations of pan de muertos or bread of the dead, depending on the different states. One thing that we have to remember, the state of Oaxaca has at least 14 different tribes, 14 different indigenous populations, and every region will have different traditions and different recipes. As any celebration in Mexico, food plays a very, very important part of the celebration. And the food throughout these days of Todos Santos are gonna change. And it usually changes depending on the family or depending on the community, not only on what you have available, but also what you wanna share with your neighbors or with different people. It can be as simple as just making a mole for your family, or it can be as extravagant as killing a cow, slaughtering a cow, and making a feast for the whole community, or goats and making barbacoa. So the food is gonna vary from day to day, but some of the elements that will always be consistent are gonna be someone making fresh tortillas every day, someone making chocolate, and always having bread around in the morning. Let's talk a little bit about moles. Moles of Oaxaca can have many different flavors. And as I said before, I like to refer to moles as the mother sauces of the Americas, or at least of Oaxaca. And we have many different kinds. Mole negro, we're gonna have, which is savory sweet mole. We're also gonna have mole rojo or red mole, which is a little bit more spicy. We're gonna have coloradito, amarillo, verde, chichilo, and manchamantel. And those are the 7 moles of Oaxaca. And from there, we can talk about the different ingredients and how to make moles. As I said before, as many different families are gonna have their own recipes, but the ingredients more or less are the same. The ingredients are gonna be a chili based with many different spices and many different ingredients, including burnt tortillas, cacahuates, which are peanuts, or also sesame seeds. In this case, let's talk a little bit about a black mole. Some of the ingredients are very specific to Oaxaca. So one of the ingredients that I wanna talk to you about is this chili called chihuacle, a black chili that is actually in danger of not being produced anymore because the families that have been carrying and growing this chili in the Mixteco region are no longer growing enough, mainly because of mass migration to the US, but also because oftentimes with the introduction of chilies from other parts of the world, it is hard to make a living. So chihuacle is one of those chilies that is in danger of being lost, but has been an essential part of this mole. The other chile that is the base of this mole negro is ancho chile, or chile de ancho, which is traditionally known. A substitution for the chihuacle, which is the chile that I was talking about, can be chile cascabel, that is more easily available. And the last chile of this mole is gonna be chile pasilla. You will also need sesame seeds, salt, pepper, oregano, thyme, allspice, peppercorns, cloves, cinnamon, onion, garlic, almonds, and either a old bread that is toasted or old tortillas that are toasted to thicken the mole. Another ingredient that people are not very familiar with, but is part of this mole, is also plantains. They are going to be either fried or put in there as a whole. Apple is also one of the ingredients of this mole. And apple is a very interesting ingredient because it came from really far away. My understanding is the apples came from the Kazakh mountains, and the apples that existed mostly in the northern part of the Americas were the crab apples, which are a little bit bitter and not very sweet. Some people also add pineapple to this mole, but the raisins are definitely part of it. Tomatoes, avocado leaves. People may add sugar or chocolate, and chocolate is usually traditionally something the people are gonna use. And as we said before, these moles are a very interesting part of understanding our history, because as just in this recipe that we were talking about, there are ingredients that came from many different parts of the world, but came part of the home of our homes in Oaxaca, and not only became a part of our homes in Oaxaca, but also became part of the foundation of Mexican food, and really the ingenuity, resiliency, and expertise of indigenous Mexican women who have taken ingredients and made them into moles, which are a fantastic way of explaining history and also food history to many different people. Chocolate or chocolate, Mexican chocolate, is also an essential part of celebration, but also a part of our history. It is said that chocolate in the past, hundreds or thousands of years ago, was drank for ceremonies, for energy, and mainly for warriors, for energy for warriors before they went to war. With the introduction of sugar, it became something that is consumed more widely, and something that was introduced to the world, including the French aristocracy. For many decades or hundreds of years, chocolate was one of the things that the French aristocracy were eating. The way chocolate is used in traditional Mexican cooking is at least in three different forms. One is in moles, which we just talked about. The second is chocolate de agua, which is drinking chocolate, and another one is also adding it to atole, which is the corn-based drink that dates thousands of years. Some of the candies found during these celebrations are going to be fruit-based candies. They have become really popular and can be found not only in the ofrendas, but also during our everyday lives. Candied pumpkin or candied squash is one of those things that evolved throughout the years and has a home now during the celebrations, but also with street vendors. Tamales are going to be part of eating during the celebration, and as we know, tamales have evolved for thousands of years with nixtamalization and tortillas. Tamales is going to be a dough wrapped in either corn or banana leaf with a filling, and it can be any filling. If you are lucky enough to travel to Oaxaca, you are going to find many different kinds of tamales, from tamales with a black bean paste, to chicken with salsa verde, to mole tamales, and even sweet tamales. There are many different kinds of tamales, and they will always vary from region to region. There are 7 regions of Oaxaca, and the tamales and the traditional of tamales will vary from region to region. In a couple of examples that I can give you, in the region of the Isthmus of Tehuantepec, the Zapotecan people there have always traditionally made tamales with iguana, with a mole rojo, with a spicy mole and iguana. But if you travel up the coast to, let's say, Pinotepa Nacional, which has a heavy influence of Afro-Oaxacan community, the recipes are gonna be different, even if the ingredients are the same. When you get to the valley of Oaxaca, close to the city of Oaxaca, the tamales are going to look completely different and even taste a little bit different. So when we think about tamales, we always think about the different regions and the different ingredients and the different traditions of people. Oaxaca is also not one of the only places to have tamales. We see tamales all across Latin America, from Puerto Rican pasteles to Ecuadorian humitas. But Oaxaca, we believe and like to claim, the tamales originated in Oaxaca, and anywhere in the US or in Mexico where you see street vendors selling tamales, I assure you they're gonna be the best tamales you can find. A very important thing to remember during this time, going into Todos Santos, Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead, whatever you want to call it, is the Day of the Dead, Dia de los Muertos, is not Mexican Halloween. Dia de los Muertos is a tradition that
that dates thousands of years and has been going on way before the United States was founded. Dia de los Muertos really honors indigenous traditions and the spirituality and beliefs of indigenous peoples of Mexico. Even if we are living in the US, we have to remember that many of us have roots in Oaxaca or other parts of Mexico and are really interested in preserving our culture. Dia de los Muertos offers a way of understanding our roots, but also a way of honoring our ancestors. And a really important way to honor our dearly departed is to make sure that our traditions don't die and to make sure that we remember where we come from.
Thank you, Neftali. That food looks amazing, and the cultural traditions that we find in Oaxaca and throughout Mexico are just amazing. Thank you for sharing those. And now we have our final presentation. We are going to be joined by Evelyn Orantes and Joaquin Newman. Evelyn first started working with the NMAI as an intern, collaborating with our education staff before the museum even opened. Since then, she's been working as a teaching artist on various programs. She's been a museum professional for more than 20 years and is currently an independent consultant specializing in community curation. Joaquin Newman connects to and expresses his indigenous roots with painting of murals, interactive artworks, and collaborative community creations, and invite participants to experience the power of creating while focusing on indigenous icons of the Americas. Evelyn and Joaquin are joining us today from their home in Oakland, California. Thank you, Evelyn and Joaquin. What would you like to share with us today?
I'm Evelyn Orantes.
And I'm Joaquin Newman. Welcome to our home where we're beginning our Day of the Dead celebrations.
We'd like to take a moment at this time to acknowledge the traditional, ancestral, unceded territory of the Ohlone Indians, whose land we live and celebrate Dia de los Muertos. We're getting ready for a Dia de los Muertos tradition. I was born in Guatemala and immigrated to the United States when I was 5. And in Guatemala, the tradition for Dia de los Muertos is to make kites or barriletes. And the barriletes, the idea is that you fly the barriletes to the heavens and send messages to the ancestors. And so this is a very literal interpretation of sending messages to the ancestors. But for the most part, it's the designs and the images that symbolize messages. And usually this is a very tiny, barrilete in comparison to what you would see in Guatemala, which is the size of our living room, and oftentimes made by a whole group of people. And then those barriletes are flown in the cemeteries, and different contests take place, like the biggest barrilete or the best design. And so it's a very important part of our tradition today.
And as somebody like myself, I was born and raised in Oakland, California, to a Yaqui Mexica mother and a Swedish-Scottish father. My traditions have been an amalgam of the things that I've learned from my elders, from my community members, and a big part of the Chicano tradition of reclaiming Dias de los Muertos as a powerful way for us to connect to our heritage and to our ancestry. And so here we're actually going to be sharing with you how we build our ofrenda, or our home altar, and sharing some of the items that we have on our altar with you. So if you look at our traditional altar, you'll see several items that are traditional, such as the copal, or the incense from the copal tree. The incense from the copal tree is used to invite your ancestors, the spirits that you want to have visit you at home, to your home altar, where you can provide offerings for them. And the offerings take many forms. The forms, the most prevalent one is water. You actually provide water for the spirits as they come back to your house, come back to your home altar to visit. Along with something to drink, you want to provide something to eat. So there are several items of food, such as pan de muertos, which is bread for the dead. It is something that is used quite a lot for many people. People can eat it as well as the ancestors as they come back to visit, as well as tamales or regular foods, and sometimes even fruit or other foodstuffs. So we'll have a lot of really beautiful things on the altar, as well as the calaveras de azúcar, or sugar skulls, which are used to symbolize the ancestors. velas, candles, which light the way for the ancestors to come into the home. And last but not least, of course, are the paper flowers, or the flowers that you'll see. And the flowers, what we're going to show you how to make today.
Another element that we also include in our ofrendas are photographs of our dearly departed. And this is actually our ofrenda space year round. We actually have our ancestors with us year round to kind of guide us through life. And on my side of the ancestors, we have my abuelita Ana. And my abuelita Ana, what I got from her as a gift, I believe, is my love of baking and love of eating sweet things, which is not always a good thing. But I have very fond memories of being in the bakery in Guatemala and scraping off all the sugar from conchas, or little sweet breads, pan dulce, and getting in a lot of trouble with my grandma. And we also have my paternal grandparents, my abuelito Beto, who really instilled in me a sense of social justice, and my abuelita Tita, who every year for my birthday, even once I came to the United States, made me beautiful dresses with embroidery that always reminded me of where I came from, because Guatemala is known for textiles. It's known for its beautiful textiles. And I've included not only Guatemalan style tamales here, which look a little different than the ones you might find in Mexico, but not in southern Mexico. In southern Mexico, tamales are similar to the ones in Guatemala. But the textile included here is a mourning textile, and in addition to the kind of the colors that are more cool colors in the blues and greens and purples, they also have this cool little figure that represents the person that's mourning. And so again, just a constant reminder of our indigenous roots and where we came from.
Yeah. And on my side of the ofrenda, I'll have my paternal grandmother Phil, who instilled in me a love of animals and for family and loyalty. And here, my grandfather Francisco Frank Guzman, who was a boxer and instilled in all his descendants a fighting spirit and also a love of those less fortunate and a desire to help.
So now we'd like to share with you how we made these paper flowers that you see in our ofrenda. The paper flowers represent marigolds, or cempasúchil, which is the Nahua word for marigolds. And I like having a combination of both real and paper flowers. The paper flowers never die, so you can have them as long as you like. But I feel like you need to have those real marigolds, because the idea behind the real marigolds is that the color and the smell are what guide the spirits home. And sometimes you might even see people use the petals of a marigold leading from the street towards a window or towards a doorway to guide the spirits home as they're coming to visit for Dia de los Muertos. So I always think that's a very lovely tradition, and I've grown accustomed to liking the smell of marigolds. I didn't like them at first. For those of you who have smelled them, you know they're really strong smell. So we're gonna get into how to make them, and first I'm gonna go over really quickly all the materials that you're gonna need. And it's not a lot. We have two different kinds of colors, orange and yellow. Marigolds do come in these two colors. I provide the yellow because during Day of the Dead, which also coincides with Halloween, oftentimes it's hard to find orange. So I think you can go with either or. And if you can't find either one of those colors, go with any color. I think I don't think the ancestors are going to be that mad at you.
That's right.
But I also wanted to show you what a real marigold looks like here, and you could get a sense of the leaves. And if you sit it like right in the middle, you could see it's a little bit, the color is actually between the yellow and the orange. So in addition to paper, about 5 sheets that are cut 6 by 6 inches, you're going to need scissors, and you're going to need a couple of pipe cleaners. I have 2 different sizes here. One is cut in half, so this is basically half of this one. And the other one's longer. The shorter ones are usually what I tend to use to really maximize my pipe cleaners. But, sometimes you want to go with a longer pipe cleaner so that you can attach it easily to something. The other thing I wanted to point out, that let's just say you can't find pipe cleaners. Another thing you could use, this one was part of my cilantro bunch that I got in the grocery store. And this was another thing. So you can use the things that you find, these little wires that you find that you find in your vegetables when you bring them home, and they could also serve as pipe cleaners. So Joaquin is going to walk us through the whole process of making the marigolds.
Yeah, so thank you for sharing that, because I think one of the fun things is that you really can use the supplies that you have around you. I mean, these things are really great. The pipe cleaners are pretty easy to find. And the tissue paper is something that you can really get anywhere. One of the good things is to try to find ones that you can cut easily into 6-by-inch squares. And I'm gonna go ahead and start with the orange ones to make one of our first cempasúchil paper. And so 6 sheets are what you need. And then also make sure your hands are dry, not oily or have water on them, because it'll really mess up the tissue paper when you're doing it. So what you want to do is you're going to take it and you're going to do what's called an accordion fold. And the accordion fold is going to start with about 3/4 of an inch on a fold to start. So you just do a fold, all 5 sheets of paper together, and then give it a nice crease from the center out. You have a nice crease and you have a 1 fold. And you flip it over and you're going to go ahead and do it again. If your paper becomes misaligned, just kind of realign it again. You're going to do that. Fold it 1 more time, give it a nice crease. Fold it, flip it back over, fold it another time, give it a nice crease. 1 more time. As you notice, you get about 5 folds for that on this paper flower. So once you have that, you're going to have a nice little strip of folded paper, and next step is you're going to want to bind it in the middle. And so you do the binding by kind of pinching it in the middle, and you can take one of these nice pipe cleaners and just fold it right over the middle of it. And once you, if I can hold on to it, once you fold it right in the middle, it'll start to cinch it. You don't want to do it too tightly. You want to be able to have to manipulate the paper as it comes out. So right below the paper, go ahead and give the pipe cleaners a twist, like 1, 2, 3 times. So you have just a little bit of a tail right there, and you can wiggle it and it's not falling out. That's perfect. So you'll have this nice little strip. There you go. And you have this nice little strip. And the next thing is you want to make the profile of the paper strip, the tips, you want it to be like petal shaped. So right now it's just square or squared off. So we want to make it a petal shape. You can do, easiest way is like a half circle kind of thing. And you just kind of cut all the folded pieces. And there you go. You just have a nice little rounded edge on that side. Do the same thing on the other side. And try to not take too much paper off, otherwise your flower will get smaller and smaller and smaller. So keeping as much paper as you can. And sometimes I even keep all these, paper scraps to make like a simulated marigold trail if I want later, or you can just recycle them. And so once you have that, you're gonna have this beautiful little rounded edged strip. And as Evelyn's showing you, you can actually go ahead and open it up to make it like a little bow tie. And once the bow tie is there you go. It's very fancy. You can wear it in your outfit. Once you open up and make your little bow tie, to keep it kind of open, you can kind of gently crush the ridges that have been made there to help it stay open. Because the next step does require you to kind of keep it open that way. And the next step is you're going to start gently peeling the leaves or the sheaves of paper towards the center in kind of like a cup shape. So you kind of gently peel the first layer up into the center, into like a gentle cup shape. And yeah, exactly. It's good to see that the paper rips, but you can just, be careful with it as best you can. I have kind of, big fingers, but I can still do it. So if I can do it, anybody can. And so then what you want to do is once you get the first two sheets of paper up, you then want to alternate. So go to the next one, you go back to the one you started with, and you do the same thing. You just repeat the process. It'll be 5 times on each side, and you rotate. You kind of pull the paper up towards the center, and you'll start to see the flower form right away. It just creates a lot of volume. The kind of wrinkles in the paper create the volume and the randomness of the petals, but the petals really start to take form too. You start to see them, right in the middle.
And the reason you don't want to just basically fluff up all one side and then the other is that it basically stays looking like a bow tie.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really give the shape of a flower, like with a little cup in the middle.
Yeah, you want to kind of interweave them on the edges. So yeah, and it's you want to do it with all of them, even the very last one. And I've seen people who do it, like sometimes they'll get 4 pieces of orange paper and then 1 green one that they'll use for the very bottom as kind of like a simulated leaf. That's a fun way to do it too. You can also, if you're, for other events and things like that, you can do cempasúchil or marigolds in many different colors. But for Dias de los Muertos, orange and yellow tend to be the traditional colors for that. And at the end, I kind of primp it a little bit to get it where I like. And look, it's a beautiful flower. Very nice, right? So one of the fun things is you can do this with a group of people, and you can do as many as you can. And sometimes we've done events where we've had to do like 200 of these at a time, and it's really fun to do, and it's a great event.
All right, so now you've made lots of these paper flowers, and you're wondering, what am I going to do with all of them? So one of the things you can do is, as you get ready to celebrate Dia de los Muertos, you might want to start getting your outfit on and get ready to strut your stuff with your family. It might be even fun to do a little fashion show with Dia de los Muertos fashions if you're so inclined. One of the things that I like to make is these crowns for Dia de los Muertos, and I had a little butterfly that's like flying off here. But basically, these crowns are actually incredibly easy to make. What you're gonna need is several paper flowers. You're also gonna need, I think for the size of my head, about 4 is fine. You're also gonna need one of these headbands, and I got these like at a drugstore. So they came in 2 colors. They came in the brown that I used here, and they came in the silver color. I think it's just whatever your preference is. And you might even have some around that you don't use and might want to do some recycle or upcycle with. So all you're gonna do, this is the magic. Basically, all you're gonna do is gonna take your paper flowers, and you're gonna twist the stem, the pipe cleaner stem onto them. And there you have it. You could be done with this.
Yep.
You could just do this, and you're done.
There you go.
Ta-da! Or you can, if you want to go more flowers, you just keep attaching them. And keep attaching them one at a time. Or you can even do 2. I think it looks pretty with 2 as well. And so you keep doing that until you get to the 4. So it looks like this. And then I started embellishing a little further. So I wanted to add a little monarch here that represents the returning souls for Dia de los Muertos. So this is what you could be wearing for your Dia de los Muertos celebration. If this is a little too much for you, you can go a little more subtle, and just using a bobby pin, you could just basically attach the flower to your hair.
For gentlemen too.
For gentlemen too. Another thing you can do is you can use your paper flower as a boutonniere.
And you can put it here on your lapel. If you don't have a pocket or a buttonhole, you can use a little tape or a safety pin.
A safety pin is a good way to go. With the longer stems, you can even use it like a little bit like a corsage, like a bracelet. So there's lots of ways you can use it. And even, so let's say you made this in a different color, you can also use it as a gift wrapping bow. So like if you're gift wrapping a present and you don't have any bows or anything to kind of decorate it, having a pretty marigold colored or any color flower here can really finish off your gift and make it be a nice addition to your wrapping paper. So again, lots of ways of using paper flowers, and again, they could be used year round, the same technique, different colors. Hope you get to try out some new styles for Dia de los Muertos this year. Enjoy.
Thank you.
So thank you, Evelyn and Joaquin. The marigold is such a meaningful flower, and it was a pleasure to learn more about it from you today. That concludes our program. We'll be archiving this program on YouTube and Facebook. Please continue posting memories of your loved ones to the ofrendas on Facebook, and perhaps you might want to even share a picture of the marigold you've made tonight with your loved ones. Thank you for joining us today, and have a safe, thoughtful, and joyous Dia de los Muertos.
Señoritas, muy buenas noches, señores, muy buenas